Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Nerd Herd Comic Book Club. Your number one stop for stellar reviews of volumes, arcs, or stories that us or yourselves choose. You can find us live every Wednesday on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, and the replay on all podcast networks. Take a seat, get yourselves and your opinions ready, as it's time to join the herd. But first, please put your hands together for your hosts, Shane, Phil, and Scott, as they kick off this week's discussion.
Ahoy hoy, and welcome to this week's episode of the Nerd Herd Comic Book Club. I'm your host this week, as I have picked this book. I have picked for us to read this week, The Boys Volume 1, The Name of the Game, from Dynamite Comics. I had to check I'm so bad at publishers' names, I had to check my book there. From Dynamite Comics, I'm going to have trouble with the year as well. What year is it? Jeez, I'm terrible at this. Do you think I'd be prepared? How long have we been doing this now? 2007. The name of the game is issues 1 to 6 of The Boys, written by Garth Ennis, art by Darick Robertson, colors by Tony Avina, letters by Greg Thompson and Simon Boland. So yes, I picked this because I love the TV show so very, very much. Before we say hello to everyone, let me introduce the two men that are here every week, or almost every week for one of them. We have up here Phil.
Hello.
And once again, we have up here Martin.
Evening all.
10th appearance on the show, Martin.
Loving it. Just keep them coming.
1-0.
You'll be having your own special one, what's it, anniversary live stream celebrating your achievements on the Nerd Herd.
I was joining you like last year. It's all good.
In fact, it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird to have Scott back. It'd be like he's filled in for you.
I think you said that to me a couple of times now.
Yeah. I'm replacing Martin this week. We have Scott.
We'll just change Martin's name to Scott, and then we just won't have to mention it at all. We'll just pretend it's Scott when Martin's on.
I'll just come on and say, Shemai.
It's sorted. So there you go. Before we say hello to the herd, let me just give you a quick synopsis. I am going to read it off the back of my omnibus. So this is the synopsis for The Boys Volume 1. It says, in a world where costumed heroes soar through the sky and masked vigilantes prowl the night, someone's got to make sure the supes don't get out of line, and someone will. Billy Butcher, Wee Hughie, Mother's Milk, the Frenchman, and the female are the boys. A CIA-backed team of very dangerous people, each one dedicated to the struggle against the most lethal force on Earth, superpowers. Some superheroes have to be watched, some have to be controlled, and some of them sometimes need to be taken out of the picture, and that's where the boys come in. So that's the synopsis for Volume 1. I mean, it pretty much sums it up and tells you what the first volume is about. It reintroduces the characters, and we find out what the boys are all about, what the supers are like. I mean, we really, really find out what the supers are like in this volume. Hopefully people have read along. Hopefully people are fans of the show as well. The Amazon Prime series, which is on its 3rd season at the moment, I believe. Season 4 is coming either this year or next year.
Yep.
Let's have a quick check in the chat and see who's there. As always, we have Liam from the Funky Gibbons in. Heidi ho. Hi, Liam. Thanks for joining. Hope you've read along. And we have Kevin Wellis as well. He says, evening all. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining. I hope you've read it a lot. I hope you've all read along, because I do think this deserves to be read at least once, in my opinion. But I can tell by Phil's face he's not as convinced. So go on, Phil. What did you think of The Boys?
No, I mean, to be fair, it's okay. This is an eventful book. There are certainly quite a few shocking moments in it. With the TV show, with the show, like I like it, but I'm not a huge fan of it. For example, I haven't even seen season 3 yet. I'm not busting to watch it. I'm not like I have to watch this now and look forward to season 4. I'll get to it eventually. I think with the book, it's very similar. Like, it's okay, it's entertaining, but I'm not sold on, like, how big of a book and how big of a story it is. Like, as Martin knows, like, we collect omnibuses and we're a bit obsessed with it at times. I don't have the 3 omnibuses that came out last year, even though people scrambled to buy it. I don't have that kind of lure to the boys, and the story, although it was good, it kind of like it didn't give me the idea that this is something you must read, but it's certainly entertaining and a few WTF moments for sure.
Yes, so I should say now, this is going to be a trigger warning, because some of the subjects in this book, some of the images, the language, it is a very mature read. I don't think anyone under the age of 18 should be reading this. This is not a child-friendly book by any means. So do not think that comics are for everyone of all ages, because this is certainly not. But with that out the way, Martin, what did you think of The Boys?
I am completely opposite to Phil on this. I'm a big fan of the TV series. I watched the first season just off the cuff to see what it was like. Loved it, and watched the other 2 seasons when they were released. Just binge watched them. So this has been on my read list for a while, and to finally get stuck into it, I am not disappointed at all. I really enjoyed it. It paid a lot of homage. The show's paid a lot of homage to the book. Yes, it's crude, and it does dial up the crude and rude and than the TV show. The TV show doesn't even touch this in my eyes. You can see they've toned it down on the show, and that's saying a lot considering what the show's like.
Absolutely. I mean, Billy Butcher drops the C word multiple times on the TV show. So if that's a dialed down version, you can imagine what is in this book. It can be a little vulgar at times, a little over the top and a little unnecessary. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a prude. I'm not, we know from my talk about Saga, my issues with that were never about the nudity or anything like that. It was just about the necessity for that to be in the book. And some of the things in this don't need to be there. They're there for shock factor, I think. Yeah. They are funny, but that's my sense of humor. Like, I can brush that sort of thing off, but I can see quite a few people who are fans of the TV show coming over to the comic thinking it's going to be the same vein and then being a little bit too shocked. I mean, even though, trigger warning, in the TV show, someone does shrink down to the size of this and go inside a male sexual organ and then expand. So you do see graphic images in the TV show, and even that is mild in comparison to the comic book, I think.
Yes.
It's
See,
definitely.
I think you're right. I think, Liam's made a comment there about, is it because it's not my favorite genre of gore? The fact that the gore in this, like, I don't like gory comics as we've seen when the context isn't right. The fighting scenes, the gore, the kind of people dying might have done in this, that's okay. My kind of, where I kind of draw the line is like the so they have like a teenage group called the Teenage Kicks, who are like the Teen Titans of the boys, and they basically share women, go woman to woman and do their thing. And I just thought, like, this is a bit too far, a bit much. And obviously there's a lot of sexual imagery throughout this book. And again, same as Shane, I'm not a prude. You could, some of the things can be funny, but some of the things, like, whoa, it's a bit too much, a bit too far. Yeah, and that's what kind of gets me.
Yeah, I think Kevin. Sorry, can I just? I think Kevin just sums this up pretty well. He says 18-year-old he really enjoyed the book, and 30-year-old him thinks the TV show is much better. I think I'm in the same vein. I think if I was reading this as a teenager, I would have loved this because this would have been edgy and, wow, look what they're doing in comics. But as an adult, I'm like, it doesn't really need to be in there. It doesn't.
I'm glad you chose Kev's comment, because I was going to go off the back of that as well. See, I do agree the TV show is better, but it was nice, and this is why I feel a bit hyped about reading this. It was nice reading this coming off of the TV show, because it was different enough that it was still good, but crude as well that the TV show didn't do. So I felt like I was getting the same thing, but a different spin on it. And I think the experience we had with Umbrella Academy a few weeks ago, where the comic didn't match up to the show, it was nice that this got closer, but a different spin. I think that's why I tend to enjoyed it more. I felt like I was getting what I was watching from the show in one way.
I still think the show, even though I'm not a huge fan of the show, me personally, I still think the show is better. Even the characterizations, like the guy who plays, what's his name? Billy Butcher. Obviously, Hughie. Like Hughie was obviously drawn to be Simon Pegg. That's who he had in mind when he was drawing them. And Simon Pegg obviously appears as Hughie's dad in the TV show.
Yeah,
as a kind of nod to that. But like the TV show's version of Hughie's far better. One, he's American, so you can understand his language sometimes with like the Scottish accent and the way he talks. This is a bit strange. Too many eyes and fewer words he says. I think it's definitely Scottish. Where if you were an American reader, you'd be thinking, "What's he saying? He's making no sense whatsoever."
But even as an English reader, I had that issue. There were some phrases he was using I've never heard of, and I was lost. Can we just say a quick hello to Connie, who's in the chat? Sup, nerds? She says, I haven't watched the show, but I will eventually because Jensen Ackles is hot in it. But this comic wouldn't make me want to read it, if I'm honest. Jensen Ackles is hot in everything because Jensen Ackles is just hot. No lies detected. So he is a very good reason to watch season 3. But yes, Jensen Ackles, Dean from Supernatural.
Come on, who's he playing the boys?
He plays Soldier Boy.
That's even who that is. Never mind.
Captain America. Matter. He's the boys' version of Captain America.
I can't remember. I don't know.
You haven't seen season 3, so you won't have watched it.
Yeah, you won't know.
I've never seen Supernatural, and Jensen Ackles is nobody to me. Sorry, Connor.
Oh my goodness.
Have you not seen Smallville? He's in that.
Yeah, he dated Lana Lang in Smallville. The barn fell on him. Clark's house fell on him, and then he disappeared. Was never in it again.
We're going back 20 years here. Come on, I can't remember this book I read.
How about Dark Angel? Have you seen Dark Angel? He played twins.
We'll show you a picture after the show.
Name me a good show he's been in. Come on.
He's in Big Sky season 3. Do you watch Big Sky?
A good show that I've actually seen. Come on. Anyway, the boys.
I could just list off his IMDb page. I know everything he's been in.
I'll look him up here. Keep talking. This is live TV. Keep going.
But yeah, I think it's because it's not fair because I have this problem because I tend to watch a show before I read the comic. I did it with Lock and Key, obviously Umbrella Academy and The Boys, and I found that I enjoyed the shows a lot more than the comics. But I really enjoyed the Lock and Key comic and I really enjoyed the Umbrella Academy comic, but they don't have the time that the TV show has to grow the characters, to grow the relationships, to make you care about the characters, so that things just happen in a comic because obviously they have to get things done issue to issue, and each issue has to have some event, it has to have something happen, so they don't have the time to slow down. Whereas a TV series, which can take one trade that is maybe 6 issues and turn it into a 10-episode run, they can then build those characters. So I think if I read this first, I wouldn't have been as excited to watch the show, but I watched the show and I really enjoyed it. And then week by week, when series 2 and 3 came out, I watched those. But if I was reading this and then I was like, "Oh, show's coming out," I would have been a bit like, "Meh, I'll get to it when I get to it." But going the other way around, I think it was fine as a comic book. I enjoyed it for what it was. I was a little bit at certain points, but I did enjoy the. I don't want to say gore, but I did enjoy the gore. I don't want to say it, but I did, especially when they fight the teenage kicks, because that was a hilarious battle.
It's 2007, so that's a good, 16 years ago, you know. So the comics,
you can tell by the language in this book.
Yeah, exactly. The language they're using, the kind of scenes you're seeing, it is very much shock factor. What could we do that's going to interest the reader and keep them go, "Whoa, what is that?" I'll read on. Whereas comics these days they're not so much like this. There's very few in between. But I find as well with this though, and this is a negative, I suppose, on the book, that I think it relies a lot on that stuff. You know, it relies on you as a reader to be quite shocked, and it keeps you reading. Don't get me wrong, but it's almost like it's cheap, and a cheap way to keep the reader interested as opposed to telling the story. Like I did like the story, like the Billy Butcher and the Hughie kind of relationship building, even though it's still kind of in its infancy. But I just to solely rely on that, like, if it didn't have all this shock, didn't have all that stuff with the the fight scenes and the killings and the the what's the fast guy's name? What's the Flash name? Adrian. He didn't kill the girlfriend. Like, what actually is there? Like, there's not much story there really.
No, without all the swearing and the sex and the blood and the gore, you're just telling a superhero story where the superheroes are the bad guys, and that's it, and that's been done. So that's why those extra layers need to be added. But you're right. What's shocking in 2007 is not shocking today, unfortunately. I think that's a negative on society, really, because these things should still shock us, but they don't. We read this and it's like, well, I've seen that in a music video on YouTube, so that's not shocking. I've seen the new Sam Smith video. Nothing in this book shocks me anymore. So it's a shame, because no one is going to get the same emotional punch or the same shock factor from reading this book today. And what can you do? But I mean, especially, I think the thing that shocked me was how everyone was shocked when one of the members of Teenage Kicks comes out as gay, and it's like, oh my god, look how this is such a big deal. He has to do a press conference and apologize to his teammates for it. I was like, that was something that in a book today, it wouldn't have been, would it?
We can talk about that more when we're talking about this story, I suppose. But that did make me chuckle, almost like they were taking the piss out of it. But then in 2007, were they taking the piss? Because
absolutely, because you could back then, because it was funny, but it was allowed to be funny back then. But what about the art? Before we show our pages, what did we think of the art?
That was great. I liked it.
Yeah. I think overall, the character designs and faces. I'm a face person, you know me. And I think seeing Billy Butcher's face straight off the bat, I was like, first page, I'm like, this is going to be decent.
You kind of mentioned Lock and Key. There's similar vibe to me to the Lock and Key art. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the way they have big thick outlines of the characters and the drawing in general, or just the big eyes they all have. But there's very similar vibes as Lock and Key for me. What I will say, I don't like the look of Billy Butcher. I think the guy in the show nails it. So this guy doesn't even look British. He doesn't look like your typical British kind of London.
No.
What's the Cockney, whatever slang, whatever they use. It doesn't fit in with this, the way he looks.
So if Hughie was obviously meant to be Simon Pegg, who do we think Billy Butcher was meant to be?
Do you know who I was thinking of? And any of our American listeners and watchers won't get this, but do you remember like Dan from EastEnders, like about 20 years ago? Do you remember that guy? No.
Yes, of course I remember Dan.
That's who I think it is. It's Dan from EastEnders. So it's Connie. I know Connie's in the chat, so you won't remember. You won't remember Dan. Dan was a bit of a thug in EastEnders. He owned the pub at one point, but that's who I was thinking of. Was Billy Butcher.
I can see that, but I couldn't think of anybody.
He was also in Cliffhanger. He fought Sylvester Stallone in the Snowy Mountain. Same guy. Same.
I mean, fair enough. Connie does have a comment on the art there. She says, sometimes the faces were kind of inconsistent. I know it's hard to draw a character consistently, but sometimes the faces were like two different characters. I did notice that with Billy.
Yes.
Mainly. But I think that's because I was seeing him so much. So for it not to be consistent, it was quite obvious.
Yeah, there were a few scenes. I'm on the page at the minute where he's meeting that director woman. I forget her name. And in each panel, like I suppose it's the lighting that's used. He's sitting in the dark shade almost, but he does look different in each panel. Like it's like literally as a different person. It's just strange.
That was my biggest hang up from the art. It was the inconsistencies. I'm glad Connie mentioned that as well, because it was too much of a standout. I found it did take me out of it a little bit because I noticed it so much, and it was multiple times through multiple issues, and it was mostly with Butcher. The others I didn't really notice it too much. Hughie was very consistent most of the time, but Butcher was the one that was the worst, sadly.
Yeah, I think maybe time If they're rushing, they don't have the time to make it exact. It could be the artist just doesn't have that one. Like you get an artist like Michael Turner and the Dodsons. They have a very specific face that they draw for everyone. So it's constant throughout every book that they do. So maybe he doesn't have that. Or maybe he was just rushed for 6 episodes. I'm going to keep saying episodes because I've got the TV show on my brain. Every time I say episode, please note that I mean issue. Shall we show our pages?
Yeah.
Okay, who should we go with first? Since I'm hosting, I'm going to go with me because I can.
Why not?
So I have blurred out, or rather, I have covered up any naughty words on this page. This is from issue 5, I want to say, the end of issue 5, right as the teenage kicks show up to take on the boys. They found out that the boys are the ones that have been blackmailing them thanks to Homelander, and they show up for a fight. And then Billy is just like, he's ready for it. And I love his face. I love Mother's Milk standing behind him, just towering over everyone else. And the fact that Frenchie brings down his goggles because he's going to fight and he knows he's going to get blood in his face. I just think it's fantastic. And I just, this kind of terrified look on Hughie's face. He just looks so out of place. Everyone else is wearing black leather and looks like a badass, and he's just there in his green hoodie.
What do I do? Sort of look on his face.
Yeah. He looks scared, doesn't he? He's like, oh, I don't want to fight. I don't want to do this. But
Billy is just about to have the time of his life. And I just thought that was a really good page, especially to show off the art. The artist's great. Absolutely fantastic when he gets a whole panel like that to just do what he wants.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was my page pick. Phil, how about yours?
Yeah, well, I had a separate one picked, but of course Martin was in there before me. So as per usual, I didn't. This is my second page. Again, it's just you see Frenchie, or he was called the Frenchman. He was called Frenchie.
Frenchman, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's called Frenchie in the show, isn't he?
Yeah,
Billy calls him Frenchie in this as well.
Oh, does he? But just like his face there, the kind of like the spit just like from his mouth, the big white teeth, and the kind of anger because he's sitting there having like a cup of coffee, I think, or whatever, just minding his own business, and then these 3 folks just pipe up and he just unleashes on them, and it's just like the anger and the way he snaps and just kicks their asses, and obviously the big headbutt where the guy's face is flattened. It's cool, it's class. But yeah, it was more to do with that top panel, just like the kind of detail in his face, the show that he snapped and he's angry. He's gonna there's the calmness in one panel, and then bang, there's the snap.
In that final panel, it looks like he's punched a guy so hard his head has gone all the way around.
Yeah, actually the chest hasn't really moved. It's just more his neck that's kind of twisted right. Yeah. Cool.
He's dangerous for such a small guy because he's a lot smaller than Mother's Milk, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Is obviously I haven't read further in this, but from the show, isn't he a hitman? Was he a hitman for the like, mafia type thing?
Well, Billy says, doesn't he? He says, like, this is Mother's Milk. He's like the ideas guy and the planner. And Hughie's like, what about the other 2? And he's like, they're the muscle. Like the female and the Frenchman, they're the muscle. Yeah, you've got Mother's Milk, who's like the size of a house. But he's the ideas guy. I love it. Martin, what page did you pick?
See, I went for this page purely for that bottom panel of watching
you both
him.
Chose headbutts.
Yeah, getting his face caved in. That was brilliant. I didn't like the teenage kicks at all. I thought they were a stupid group, and to finally see one of the boys plant one on him, and in that fashion as well, where you see his cheeks ruffled up or his head butt him that hard, love it.
And later on when he's speaking, because he's got a broken nose and he's mumbling and he's like,
when he's on the news or giving his eulogy for the friend that died, he's like, he can't pronounce his words. Brilliant. That's the kind of stuff makes me chuckle, to be fair.
That was the Nightwing counterpart, I assume. Big Game. I assume he was meant to be Nightwing. Obviously the 7, I know who they're meant to be, but the others I was trying to figure out. Like,
because I
think
Dog
was meant to be Beast Boy.
There was an advert, wasn't there, where they had a an advert or a poster or something of the Teenage Kicks, and the leader was at the front, and he had a similar suit actually as old school Nightwing. So maybe you're right. It is going to be Nightwing.
See, I didn't pick up on any of that purely because of the introductions of those characters. Pretty much scarred me for the rest of the book. I didn't have. I don't know. I just didn't focus on that. Anyone that's read it will know exactly what I'm talking about. I just couldn't take note of who they were in other companies or based on.
Yeah.
Yes. Phil, you picked an extra page because you wanted to show something off.
Yeah, I don't know what Darick Robertson and the other guys look like, but that's definitely Garth Ennis in the back and the right hand side there. And when you see these three, they're kind of like shoehorned in. And I always notice whenever creators do get put into their own book, like they always appear a bit more detailed than normal. Whereas background characters or background people that don't have them in detail, but they are very prominent on this panel. And that is Garth Ennis. The other two guys, I am assuming, are some way part of this book as well, and it's just a good way to kind of get them in, to show it off.
It's a good catch because I don't know what Garth. Garth. I don't know what Garth Ennis looks like, so I would never have picked that up. So that was a nice find there.
He is a good Northern Ireland fellow, and we don't have a lot of shout about whenever someone makes it big. We're proud of that. So I might not like this book as much as some people, but well on Garth. I keep saying Garth or Gareth. It's the same thing, Gareth.
But Garth Ennis does have a massive problem with superheroes. I assume he does not like superhero comics in the slightest, and he especially has an issue with the Justice League, as the Seven, who are the big superhero team in this book, are clearly the Justice League. You have Homelander, who is Superman, Queen Maeve, who is Wonder Woman, Black Noir, who is Batman, A-Train, who is the Flash. You have the Deep, who is Aquaman. You have Jack from Jupiter, obviously Martian Manhunter, and of course you have Lamplighter, who's got to be Green Lantern. Yes. So it's like he really does not like the Justice League, and I don't know why, as a fan of the Justice League myself, but
he's never written for... Has he ever written for DC or Marvel?
I would hope not, if this is how he would treat the Justice League.
He's known for The Boys. He's known for... Is it Preacher? He's on Preacher.
Yeah, that's DC. I think he's written for DC Vertigo. I don't think he's written for DC Universe.
Yeah. So maybe it's his way of... He really does not like them, or else he's just... Maybe he's bitter. I don't know. But not being selected. But then again, I don't know. I don't think he would be. I mean, he's made a lot of money in the back of this, obviously. So, yeah. But you're right. He's clearly taking the piss out of the Justice League and the fact that they're terrible characters. Yeah.
Well, Kevin says he hates all superheroes,
he
did
Of
Punisher.
course, yes. The Punisher. Yeah.
There you go. One thing I did notice that was completely different from the TV show to this is Jack from Jupiter, because in the TV show we have what's his name? Translucent.
Oh, yes.
Translucent is the member in the Seven.
Is Translucent the one who gets the bomb up his backside and blows up?
Yes. He is the one that blows up from the inside out. But he's part of the Seven in this, so they changed it in the TV show. I don't know why they didn't want Jack from Jupiter.
Do you reckon they did it because it wasn't Translucent in the show used as that introduction for Hughie? Because it was the fight with Butcher and Translucent in the store that Hughie was working in?
Yes, but it could have been quite easily Jack from Jupiter. That could have been... There was no need to change him into a completely different character. I don't think, personally, because I assume Jack from Jupiter has Martian Manhunter's powers. So that would be invisibility and transformation.
But then, would he not then kick Billy Butcher's ass in that shop?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Well, I don't... Oh, yeah, because in the TV show, Billy Butcher, and another big thing, Billy Butcher doesn't use the Compound V in the TV series. Yeah. Whereas in this, they're all jacking up on it so they can go toe-to-toe with the supers, which I thought was a good thing, because having just a bunch of humans go up against the supers made no sense from a TV standpoint, I don't think. But in this, having them be able to take a punch and give a punch makes a lot more sense.
Obviously, I almost think that the Compound V thing I didn't quite understand, because Hughie killed that guy and didn't even try. So does this make them even stronger than the so-called heroes? Do you know what I mean? Like, they were able to like easily dispose of them. There wasn't that much of a fight.
It depends on how you react to Compound V. It affects everyone differently. This is just my knowledge from the show, because obviously we've only read the first 6 issues, but in the show, everyone has their own reaction to Compound V.
Yes, everyone gets a different superpower.
One thing I didn't like, I did like, but I didn't like when it comes to the Compound V, is the fact that the ladies of the night were using it in order to keep up with the teenage kicks. Like, it's clever in a way, but it's also like you're really highlighting something pretty dark, that they have to use this drug in order to kind of keep up with what them guys are doing, and it's a hard one to kind of think about or take, or whatever, I suppose. But
that whole scene I did flick through really quickly because I wasn't really invested in that. I didn't want to.
This is where I prefer the show, the way they dealt with Compound V, because it was more realistic to how it would work. In the show, it was something that you couldn't just go and buy or get your hands on. This seems like something you could go down to your local Sainsbury's and pick up off the shelf, didn't it? It seemed very sort of easy accessible for people.
Yeah, although like they were able to get their hands on it, the ladies of the night, as Phil put it, they were able to get it in powder form to snort. But when Butcher needed some, like the head of the department, she said she had a right time trying to get it. It cost a hell of a lot and favors and all this just to get 2 vials of it. So is it easy to get, or is it really difficult to get?
Did she say something about in its purest form in the comics? She made a point of saying.
But they didn't get it in their purest form. They got it diluted, because he says to Hughie it will wear off in a couple of days.
Well, maybe the stuff the mum were taking was even more diluted, cut with God knows what else, as drugs would be in reality, and I suppose. But so maybe he was happy to get it officially because it's cleaner. One would think, I suppose.
So, what did we think of the writing then? We've touched on the plot points, but what did you think of the actual writing, the text you were forced to read throughout these issues?
I think, to be fair, like, obviously there's a lot of shocking moments. I think with the trying to do the English accent and the kind of Cockney kind of slang, even though like Garth is, from this part of the world, I almost feel like it's like an American trying to do it rather than it being like organically like this is how English East London, or I don't know if it's East London or West London or wherever, I'm not sure. This is how they speak. I almost feel like it was just too much of it. Like they were trying a little bit too hard to do it. So for the Billy Butcher stuff, obviously he was the most prominent character, spoke the most. I just thought like a bit too much Cockney, trying too hard.
See, although I did enjoy his scenes the most.
Yeah, the writing for Butcher didn't bother me at all, because like when we read stuff from other publishers, I can't help but hear Carl Urban in my head when I'm reading it, and Carl Urban's not British.
He's New Zealand, yeah.
Yeah, so I just heard his voice and it didn't bother me at all. I found
that's the kind of voice I was hearing it in myself, but I just think again, but just some of the sentences didn't really fit in together because the way you're trying to say it in this kind of accent, and I think there are occasions where it didn't really work too well. Not it's minor, it wasn't a major issue, it was fine, but just there were a few things that I noticed. In terms of like even the TV show, I'm not a huge fan of the show, but there's a lot of things that are different. Like the female, I thought they just found her randomly in the show.
They did, yes. She was injected with Compound V and kidnapped by some terrorists.
Because didn't somebody kill her brother or something in the show as well, or whatever? But that felt like a better introduction for her than her just being part of the team already, part of the setup. And the fact that they built her up to be this psycho, it didn't come across like that as well as it did in the show. I get the show has more time to put these things out, but like there wasn't that many scenes on this for her, and I think even the team, like the Frenchman or Frenchie, and is it Mother's Milk? I don't think they were used as much. We got more of the teenage kicks than we did these guys. I think she'd been the other way around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Although I did really enjoy the interaction with Mother's Milk's daughter when she
Yes, yes,
disrespects him and leaves the house, and Billy goes out and talks to her, and it just goes to show how much respect he's got for Mother's Milk. Like he's his mate, and he's like,
yeah.
he will not be disrespected in my presence. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was a good scene, to be fair. And he goes out, and the guys pull the gun out of it, and he just like destroy the gun? He squashes it, doesn't he? And then they just speed off. Yeah, that was good fun. I like that myself.
Yeah, and he just proper puts her in her place and tells her to get back inside and appreciate that man for everything that he does. And I thought that was really nice. Like, I wasn't expecting that from Billy. You don't expect anything like that from Billy. You just expect him to just be hard and just that's it.
I think I do want to continue reading this though, because I just, knowing what I know from the show, I just feel like I've got to get deeper into this to see more comparisons. Because, you know, like yourself, Shane, we've watched them all. You know, we know what these characters are. We're more emotionally attached. So it's a little bit, we're not getting a lot at the moment. We're being sort of breadcrumbed information at the moment.
And I also think that emotional connection that we have with Billy from the TV show, I don't think we're ever going to get that from this book, because the biggest difference is in this book, his wife died.
Yes.
Giving birth to a super baby, whereas in the TV show she didn't. So, you know, you have that connection because he's looking for her. He wants to know where she is. She just disappeared, so he knows that she's out there. And in this, she's dead. So he just wants plain revenge, and that's it. The only thing on the table is revenge.
I thought in the show he thought she was dead. Wasn't that a big revelation whenever he discovered she's alive?
Well, he does for the first half of the first series, and then he finds out that she's alive. And
Spoilers
then he finds
for anyone.
Sorry.
Yeah, who's 4 years out. But yeah, he finds her and she's given birth to a super baby. So she now has a child who's like, what's he, like 7, 8 years old?
Yeah.
So that's a massive thing to change from the book to the TV show.
I mean, at the end of the day, like most things are changed for TV, and that's fair. And I think that's why with Umbrella Academy, I think we all said we preferred the show over the comic.
Yes.
Again, this is probably one where if you've watched the show first, like that's your version of the boys. I think the show, even though I'm not a huge fan of that is my version of the boys. This is just secondary, even though this is the source material. And I think I prefer the way that the show took this story than this actual story.
Yeah, and I'm also a little bit disappointed in the first volume. I know it was only 6 issues, but there was no interaction between Homelander and Billy Butcher at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can tell it's building to it, but yes, they've had it ended with that or something, like an encounter or something. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, just something, even a phone call, a message, a letter gets delivered, just something between the two of them. So he knows Billy's out there. That's why he tells the teenage kicks that Billy's the one that's been blackmailing you. And Billy knows Homelander's out there, obviously. But
although I do love at the very start when Billy Butcher's just sitting on a park bench and then they fly over and he's like, I'm going to have you. I'm going to have you. Like, I like that. It's like, I'm going to have you one day.
And right at the end of this arc, it does get mentioned about the child that she had when she died, that he had laser vision. So it does drop the hint of, it's definitely building to it. It's definitely building to it. It's why I've got to carry on, because it's just.
Yeah, that was a brutal scene when he was telling Hughie about his wife, who, you know, pretty much exploded next to him in bed, and a super baby was crawling out of her and firing laser vision out of his eyes. And he said he had to beat it to death with a lamp. And it was like, but he was just like so nonchalant about it. He was just telling him this thing that happened, you know, like I got stuck in traffic today. It was just something that just happened to him.
And even though like it's a super baby, it was still a baby. So it's like the idea of you're describing beating this baby with a lamp to death.
Yeah.
It's wrong on so many levels.
So again, I prefer what they did in the TV show, where he finds a super baby with laser vision and uses him as a gun. That was in the TV series. He's just aiming the baby at people. That was great. But yeah, I think the comedy is a little bit lost in this. The TV show has quite a few comedy moments, as dark as it is, but there are some light moments, and I didn't find any apart from the things that I laugh at because of my sense of humor, I don't think they were meant to be funny in this book.
You're right. There wasn't too much in this that I could point to as being purposely comical. Certainly some of the shock things that you might laugh at, I get it, but nothing, apart from the things I've obviously been saying, I did chuckle at, but like there wasn't there's no good lines that were said. There was nothing that made you like think this character is really funny. They're all quite too serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I found Butcher's lines were probably the funniest. But coming off the back of the show, we didn't get much out of Frenchie. And Frenchie's quite funny in the show when he wants to be. And same with he's the same. He can come out with some one-liners. And I think some of the Seven as well, they have their moments. Like they just seem really just angry, don't they? Most of them in this book. And I think look at Homelander, for example. We continuously keep comparing it to the show. Unfortunately, you've got people like Anthony Starr who plays Homelander. He's leveled that character up beyond where definitely. I think this book can take it.
Yeah.
So
you've hit the nail on the head. That's 100% correct. Like you've mentioned Carl Urban as well. And what's his name again? Sorry, that actor's name. The Homelander. Anthony Starr. Like these guys do their job so well that they elevate the characters for the show so much more than it does here. Bear in mind that this is the first volume. I'm not trying to diss the boys too much. I mean, there's 3 omnibuses off it, so I'm sure at some stage the characters kind of get better. This being the introduction, you can tell it's chalk and cheese for me that the actors elevate those characters far more than this book allows.
Oh yeah, I mean Homelander is one of the most terrifying people on TV. The way his face changes, it can just be the way he moves his eyes or the way his smile goes, and he can go from charming and he looks like the best superhero in the world, and one facial expression and he looks like the worst supervillain you've ever seen. He does it so well in the TV show, and I think that's hard to do in comics without putting horns and a tail on someone. There's not much they can do really.
I felt you only got it once in this volume where I felt that, and that's when they had the board meeting with Vought, and he was giving A-Train a sort of a speaking to, wasn't he? And that's when I felt like I felt that presence of what you get from the show, and I was like, oh, here we go. Finally, he's given us that. And then you didn't see it again for the rest of this volume. So I'm hoping we see it more.
I did like that scene when he goes, "Don't get up until I've left."
Yeah.
Just makes him stay on his knees in the hallway until he's walked away. He's just so terrifying.
And that's the thing. That's his business head on, because I think at some point they said about the survival rate of something that was like 60% for superheroes because they're not trained. It isn't their job essentially, but they're paid to do it and they get all the sponsorship to do it. But really they don't care. They care about making the money. That's what they want.
Yeah.
So it's all what you see obviously in the cameras is what they want you to see. Even that has a certain level of like him being quite sinister. He doesn't care. He's all quite selfish. Just wants
the
money.
Superhero game, it's a business. Superhero is a business in this universe. It's not meant to save people. It's just meant to make money for promotions, for posters and books and merchandise. I mean, one of their meetings is Deep complaining that he's only getting 0.75 of the merchandise money instead of a whole percent, and Homelander's like, well, it's about the 3 of us. Everyone wants a Queen Maeve, a Homelander, and a Black Noir figure. No one wants a Deep figure, and obviously that's a dig at Aquaman. And but I thought it was just a funny thing to just have in the book. I do appreciate that this feels like it was thought out. This wasn't someone who just wrote issue 1 and then got to issues 2, 3, and 4. It felt like the first arc was planned, especially with the bookends of Hughie. So you start with Hughie holding his girlfriend's arms, and the paramedics and the police are like, "Let go, it's okay, let go." And then when he kills the which one does he kill? He kills Blarney Cock. He kills, and he still has his fist through his chest, and they're like, "It's okay, Hughie, let go. It's okay, just let go." Like it just mirrored him holding his girlfriend's arms. I thought that was a nice little bookend to the arc, and it shows that this was thought out before, and I appreciate that.
because I've got to give it to Garth Ennis with this. I know we hold the TV show a lot higher than what we do the book at the moment, but let's forget the TV show for 1 second. Like, this universe is actually a really good idea that no one's ever thought of doing before, and the idea of the characters, the way that they are portraying it, where it's business and all money involved, and it's very well thought out. As you say, it's a thought out story, and you can see why it went so long.
Yeah, I mean, it is very well thought out. It has kind of been done. You have the Crime Syndicate of America, the evil version of the Justice League. They come from Earth 3. They used to come from Earth 2. It's Earth 3 now, but they ran it like a business. They were in the protection racket. Yep, Ultraman and Superwoman, Owlman. They ran the Justice or the Crime Syndicate as a business. So he could have taken a little inspiration from there and then expanded. But Vought Industries is just the worst kind of company. I mean, they don't care what their superheroes do. All they care about is the bottom line. And they didn't even, like, the Seven didn't even go to the funeral at the end for the Blarney Cock. They just sent a spokesperson who's like, sorry, they can't be here, but they've got something really important planned, so stay tuned. You're not gonna want to miss it. And it's like, dude, this is a funeral.
It's a sales pitch, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's one thing I liked as well about this kind of universe, is that whenever Billy Butcher was given his motivation of why he does what he does, and he was basically saying that, like, we could have one of these in the White House, the way things are going, one of these supes who don't care about the people. They only care about the money. They don't care about themselves, and essentially do not have the best interests of the people. They could be in the White House. And I like the fact that he feels like that responsibility to prevent it. And I think that spokesperson, or they mentioned somebody who was there at the funeral, who was somebody who's a politician type of thing. So
the vice president, who couldn't get a single word out, he was just stammering and misspeaking. He was a complete and utter buffoon, and he's like next in line for the White House, and he's got powers.
Yeah, and that's the thing that obviously that's your motivation. That's obviously, as well as his revenge for his wife and kid and stuff, that he knows that these need to be stopped, because if they do take control, I mean, because they could destroy the world if they want the minute easily. There's no.
Well, he says.
There's no one
does say, doesn't he? They don't know. Yeah, they don't know that they could. I mean, they know they can do it, but at the moment they want money and they want power. But if they decide that they just want everything, who's going to stop them? Yeah.
So I like that, and that kind of adds layer to him as well in terms of the way he does it, and gives legs to future volumes of why he continues to do it. Because no doubt he's going to come across some troubling times for himself. So yeah, I like that.
I am going to read on. I did have to stop myself because I did almost read on, because I was reading this on Monday, and I got to the end of it, issue 6. And I was like, oh, should I just do one more? But I was like, no, wait till I've spoke about it, because I don't want it to taint anything. Because if I read one issue and it was amazing or terrible, then it would obviously affect my score subconsciously. So I deliberately stopped at issue 6. I'm not
going to read on. It hasn't hooked me to the point where I'm a fan of this and I want to read on. Or even, like, I haven't watched season 3 of the show. That was like best part of a year it's been out, so I don't have that kind of urge to read or watch the show. And I'll read it if it's on the Nerd Herd, if someone picks it, or if it comes up in sequels month or something, but it's not something I'm going to try and buy or pick up myself to read on. There's a million and one other books ahead of this at the moment. But that doesn't mean I didn't like this. It just means it's just not something that I'm eager to read now.
Yeah, we've had books like that we've enjoyed, but we just would only read it for the Nerd Herd. I think Skyward was one of them. We really enjoyed the first volume of that, but we were all like, well, we'll wait until it comes up again on the Nerd Herd. That wasn't to say it was a bad book, but yeah. We've all got like dozens of books in our read pile as it is. We can't keep adding to them, can we? We just never get to the bottom of it. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Because I think we should get to our final thoughts and scores, because people in the chat, I should have mentioned this before, but next week is Herd's Choice. So if you have a book you'd like us to read next week, don't forget to pop it in the chat. And you will, of course, receive some merch from the Nerd Herd. You'll get a notebook, a bookmark, and sticker from us. And you can join us, of course, for your pick. That's how we met this guy for the first time.
Yeah. I was going to say, Martin, you're still allowed to pick for next week. You know, even though you're here live, you still got a chance to pick.
So, shall we get to our final thoughts and scores then?
Yeah.
Phil, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I actually think this conversation has maybe drop a point, but just drop a point. It's a hard one. I did enjoy it. I don't want just to think that me talking quite negatively throughout the show means I didn't enjoy it. It's not something I would rush back to read or read on. But I wouldn't be disappointed if I have to. The art, I liked the art. I think it looked well. Yes, there's inconsistencies in the faces. Kevin mentioned earlier on the chat, the colors weren't the best, which I kind of agree with too, because again they were quite inconsistent. Story-wise, some of the characters I wish I had seen more of, like so the female, even Frenchie. We only got a small taste of him, to be honest. And I think I wanted to see more of them, other than teenage kicks. I think the seven, they've done a good job of kind of putting them on a pedestal, but being jackasses, especially when they try to get what was her name, Starlight, and her into the group. I thought that's a bit too much, and that's my problem with this book in general. There's just too many things. There's just too much, too crude, too vulgar. All the sex stuff. It's borderline rapey. Well, it is, like, obviously with Starlight, like they do things to her that she doesn't want to do for her initiation. It's horrible, and it touches these themes, which obviously, yes, trigger warning. You know, we've seen movies like this all the time, but just think when you see it and read it in a comic book, it just makes you go, that's too much and too far. So I will sit on a 7. But I think just throughout this book, I've realized how much I like the TV show better. I'm not a huge fan of the TV show, so I've knocked this down to 6.5. But that's not to say I didn't like it. It's fine. But 6.5 for me is fair. Have you lost Shane?
Okay, 6.5. Martin?
Okay. You're there?
Yeah.
You're there? We can hear. Bit delay. I did enjoy this, but I've not been shy. I do love the show, and the show is better. I can't help but put this in the same sort of area as Umbrella Academy, so my scoring is going to be very similar to the way I treated that book. The artwork in this I enjoyed. The same as Phil, I did notice the inconsistency with the faces quite a lot with Butcher, and I did notice it when we saw any sort of landscape. So when we saw like New York, and when we saw like the Flatiron Building, the artwork wasn't the best. But other than that, the character designs were great. I really enjoyed them. The story, I loved the crudeness, but again, if you like the show, you know what you're getting yourself into with this. And I think if you read this first, you know what you're getting yourself into with the show. You know, but obviously it's a little bit more tamed down with the show. But I'm actually going to score this the exact same score I scored Umbrella Academy, because I feel this can get better, and I'm giving it the room to get better. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and that's fair. If I agree with that, like, this is the introduction. There's room for growth, and that's what we hope for.
Yeah.
Shane, I'm taking the averages, by the way, if it helps.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
My trusty spreadsheet. I should have said
that. So for me, massive fan of the TV show. It's why I picked it. I wanted to read the book to see what it was like. I do prefer the TV show over the book. Just not to say the book is bad. The art's great for the most part. And if you like gore, if you like swear words, if you like this sort of thing, then yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I'm not gonna score it too high, because I do think this can get better, because I say that I think I know this can get better because I know what's to come thanks to the TV show. But at the moment, this wasn't great. It was good, but it wasn't great. I enjoy the character of Billy and Hughie. The rest were very underdeveloped, but I'm hoping we get a bit more to them. I'd like to know the backstory of the female a little bit more. because she was just very, very underused in my opinion. And I can't wait to see Billy versus Homelander in the book. So I will read on, but for me, this is a 7. It's not great, but it's not bad, and there's no way I can score it less than a 7, I think, to be totally fair.
Cool. Well, I will go through the scores here, shall I, from the chat. Is that all right, Shane? Do we do that?
Yep.
So the first score we had in was from Connie, who said she's given a 7. So this was an interesting enough start, and I will probably read on their score. And Liam has said he was quite underwhelmed by this. The show takes the source material and surpasses it with ease. I don't think I'll read on, but it was good to read this book and now have that comparison. 6 out of 10. Kevin, my score is 5.5. This is the first time reread since I was a teenager, and it just doesn't hit the same anymore. That's all the scores. Yes, so with the 7, the 6, and Martin's 7, and Kev's 5.5, that gives us a herd average of 6.4. So add that with my 6.5, Scott's 7, and Shane's 7. That gives us an average of 6.7. So it isn't too bad.
I think that's fair.
That's not bad.
So,
where does that come on the leaderboard? Could you just do that for me while I just get these picks for next week?
So 6.7 doesn't make the top 10. It does not, but not too far off it. Let's see where it does come. So 6.7, it jumps into 12th. Just takes the place of Guardians of the Galaxy. Knocks it down a peg. So yeah.
I'm pleased with that because as you can see, Umbrella Academy got 5.5, was it? Or 5.8?
Umbrella Academy, it got 5.8.
5.8. So I thought this was better than Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased this got a bit higher across the board. It's a fair score.
I agree. But yeah, folks, that is The Boys, Volume 1, the name of the game. But I think, and we've all mentioned it, the TV show is far better. Shane is just getting the herd's choices. So I go through them. Shane?
I am. Sorry, I have to do the wheel on my phone because as I tried to open a second window, I just disappeared from StreamYard and I couldn't see or hear either of you. So my laptop is horrible.
And Shane did ask me in the private chat, can I do the wheels? Like, I don't know how to. I don't know what site these guys use. I have no idea. But I will go through.
I have the correct site that Scott uses. This is the site that Scott uses. See, the show falls apart when he's not here. We need Scott. He can never miss a Herd's Choice week again because we're useless without him.
Anyway, the choices this week are Connie has picked Public Domain by Chip Zdarsky. Liam has picked Batman versus Bigby, A Wolf in Gotham. Kevin has picked Five Ghosts. And Martin here has picked TMNT Volume 1 from the IDW series. Interesting. So there's our 4 picks. Actually, Pete as well. Did you get Pete's one? Pete had picked in the private chat earlier on. He asked for Thanos Wins to go into that as well.
Thanos Wins.
Yeah, that's the one by Donny Cates, I think.
Yes.
It's just tremendous. It's the Cosmic Ghost Rider. I kind of want that to win, no offense. But so here we go. Good luck, everyone. Shane.
I'm going to give this a shuffle. One. It's not great on the phone, is it?
We're really professional. Just hit the button.
Professional.
It's all right. That's grand.
Oh, it tapped to spin. There you go.
There we go.
Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Join us next week. This is not a fix. This is not a fix. So, Martin, you will be invited back next week where we will be reading TMNT Volume 1, the IDW series. Which I've actually already read. So, yeah, that should be good. That's interesting. Looking forward to that.
Yes. Be nice to read Turtles again. We had Turtles a few weeks back. I missed that one because I had no voice. Yeah, and I get to talk about Turtles this time. Awesome.
It's quite funny, though, because we obviously have these packs made up of the swag. And every week, Martin gets selected. Like we're saving him postage because we're not sending them out. But he has one. So
he's got one. He don't need more. He'll only put them on eBay.
Come
Makes
near
big money.
come September, come near a charity shop near you. All our swag will be donated.
We're gonna have so many. We print off 12, so we only need 12.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
but Martin's getting them all. So
Yeah.
Building them up, saving them.
So yes, that was The Boys Volume 1 from Dynamite Comics from 2007. My pick next week is Martin's pick with TMNT Volume 1. What year is that from, Martin?
No
Do you
clue.
know the rough year?
No, I just threw it out there as just a last minute pick because I wasn't prepared.
I think
So-
it's like
Okay, well, we will find it
2015
and put it
or
on our Instagram. We will pop it up on the Instagram so we can make sure it's the exact one that you want, and we'll pop that up there for next week. Awesome. Looking forward to that. And Scott will be back next week as well. So we'll have a full house on the Nerd Head. Yay. But until then, there's nothing. Oh, actually, I think there. Do we have a Martin's draw along tomorrow? Kevin.
My
Kevin's
draw along.
And not Martin. Well, you're here. You do everything, Martin. Do you draw along as you might as well do Kevin's draw along as well at this point?
Kev, you know where I am. I'm not as good as you, buddy, but hit me up. I'll team up with you.
So is Kevin doing a draw along tomorrow? If he is, it will be up at 7 o'clock
Yes,
on the
and
Nerdhead channel.
it is
Superman, isn't it?
Superman.
Superman,
How to draw Superman. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. Check that out.
Yes, definitely. That man knows how to draw, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So jealous.
Did you? This is the thing, because Pete, who's a fan of the channel, has a Art Attack show not every Monday night, every month on a Monday night, and Kev was on it previously, with Alex Cormack, like a professional artist, and whenever they show their arts or their drawings, their arts, like it was Kev or Alex, like they couldn't decide between the two of them, and that just shows how good Kev is, and we're delighted to have him. So yeah, check those out every Thursday, 7 p.m.
Absolutely. And last week I did forget to mention, but he did do a draw along on how to draw a robot. So if you missed that, do go and check that out, because we read Dave last week. So he showed us how to draw a robot and he just absolutely smashed it. So please check that out.
Yeah.
So awesome. So then, with all that said and done, Martin, once again, would you please sign us off?
Get your waves out.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Love you.